From the paranormal to the extraordinary, from the weird to the wonderful, this is On the Odd.
Hello, you are listening to On the Odd. My name is Mark, and I am again talking tonight with Alex. Good evening, Alex.
Good evening, Mark.
How is everything? How are you enjoying this meso winter that we're getting here on the East Coast?
It was very slushy today, and you know what's funny? I actually spoke with someone in Boston today, and she was telling me how they got 14 inches of snow. So this particular one just kind of slid through here or whatever, or just missed, and it up north they got it much worse.
Wow. Yeah, I think we're lucky. It's a good old winter, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
have you taken out the sled at all with your son?
We kind of just played around a bit. I bought him a battery controlled ATV. I think I told you about this.
Yeah,
so he was kind of flying around in the snow with that thing, but it gets stuck pretty easily. It's not that heavy, so it doesn't really grip that well. But anyway, that's not very odd.
Okay. Well,
so I think I caught your cough, by the way. I don't know if that's possible. Can I digitally catch a cough?
It is possible. What is it like? Just a tickle?
Not even a tickle, just more along the lines of I just have to constantly clear my throat.
Oh.
I feel like I have to drink more water, personally.
That's actually how it came on, the cold that I was fighting for so long. I remember it started with just constantly having to clear my throat.
Well,
not to alarm you.
At least we know where my death began.
Oh, no. So anyway, in the interest of talking about odd stuff, I actually was thinking about a story, a UFO story I wanted to tell for a while. And I really enjoy telling UFO stories that are first-hand accounts. In other words, I meet somebody, I assess their credibility, and if I think they're truthful, I listen to their story. And if it seems truthful, then it really interests me. And I have dozens of these stories. I've always been interested in
it's
gathering
interesting.
Information.
How many times have you met somebody? I think that you and I tend to have a pretty decent BS filter.
Yeah, I know.
And you really fill people out. And there are just some people that I buy into, and there just seems to be a certain passion sometimes where you can just tell that even if it isn't true, this person believes it's true.
That's it. I think you can easily tell if someone at least believes it's true.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry if you want to go on.
No, but that goes back to there was someone I mentioned on a previous episode about black-eyed kids, and he had a YouTube account, and there was just something about his story that sounded like it might not have happened to him, and I didn't take it too seriously because it didn't seem truthful, much as a lot of the stuff on YouTube, is. But then again, you'll find people who sound truthful. Anyway, this story.
By the way, it's not me.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the story. Do you remember in the, I guess, late 80s and 90s, upstate New York was a hotbed for UFO sightings?
Yeah. Well, being here on Long Island, this was kind of, it was like around like above the Hudson Valley, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It was kind of known at this time that there seemed to be a lot of people talking about a lot of things up there. It just was happening just there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go up there to see anything, but I have friends who would just kind of go up there and explore, and nobody ever came back with any amazing stories. But the stories that came out of the area and the footage was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I have two accounts. The first one is simple. It's one of my best friends, and he was at his house where his family lives up there, and he was in his bathroom, and they're in a very wooded area. There's like a pond and stuff, and he says he saw a UFO hovering just above the tree line and kind of go in away from something out of view. And he was just watching. He couldn't believe his eyes.
Now, when you say UFO, do you mean literally it was an unidentified flying object, or does he believe it was a type of like spacecraft?
He just described it as being an alien UFO.
Okay. So he's not sure. I mean, who would know? If I saw that, I wouldn't know what it was. It would be an unidentified flying object.
That's really... I don't remember the details of the story. It happened very quickly, and, maybe he was seeing things, but he seems to believe that he saw this. Now, that's just the short little thing I wanted to mention about upstate New York, because that was in that area. Now, here's the story. My father has a good friend. I'm not going to use his name because I haven't talked to him yet about whether it's okay to tell a story. I'm sure he'd actually come on and tell a story if we wanted. But
who, Mike? No, I'm joking.
And he lives in Manhattan. And for a while, I think he had a house upstate. He might still have the house upstate. And I don't remember the specific time period, but it was just around that time period of when everyone was claiming to see this UFO event. And if you study this, if you go back, you could see that one of the things that hundreds of people claim to have seen was a very large triangular shaped object, the size of a football field, up in the sky, often at night. And he said that one night he was driving up with his wife. They were on the Taconic Parkway. He saw a few cars on the side of the road stopped. They looked. They didn't know what was going on. And then they realized up above them was like this gigantic ship. And he described it as being triangular. They pulled off on the side of the road, I believe, and just looked at it. Everyone couldn't believe what they were experiencing.
Huh.
And it was slowly moving across, utterly silent. No noise at all. He said it kind of shook them up, but they were, just as much as they were scared, they were totally fascinated by what they were seeing. Now, when he told this story, there was not any shred of doubt in my mind that he was being genuine, that he did experience this. And his wife experienced it, and all these people on the side of the road experienced it.
And do they fall into that category of these are not the kind of people who would make this up?
Exactly. He's a totally straight up, guy. He's a graphic artist, and is the kind of guy who doesn't want a lot of attention. That's how he strikes me. Anyway, that's the whole story, but it's fascinating that I'm really thrilled that I got to speak to someone who actually witnessed this.
Now, a lot of times people will see something and they're not really sure what to do. Did you know that there was actually a website that you can report these things to? I'm sending you a link right now if you want to take a look at it.
All right.
And, I broke it down to just New York. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, a lot of these could be just kind of fake, of course, but who would actually take the time to go do this? But a lot of them are on Long Island. And one was just reported from a week ago in Levittown here in New York. 3 sets of lights seen over Nassau County, New York, for a duration of less than 20 seconds. Northport, New York, 30 seconds. An orange orb leading diamond-shaped.
Holy cow, this is great.
It's interesting, right? This has been around for a really long time.
Wow.
And, this particular, the guy who runs this, I think this is the website he runs. He goes on to Coast to Coast every once in a while. I don't know if you ever listened to that with George Norrie.
No, I know, but I haven't listened to it, though.
I enjoy the show. I can't listen to it all the time, but when I do catch it, I think it's informative. It's a fun show to listen to. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the guy who runs it said that for the past 3 months or so, there's been a lot of activity out of nowhere, like just a not normal amount of activity. And he just said it's very, it's just not common. I mean, you see here, in the month of November, I see maybe, a dozen reports here for New York.
This is all New York, basically.
Yeah, this is broken down to just New York. But,
here's one where it says, Mark,
where did you grow up, by the way? Where is it? Green something you...
Greenlawn.
Yeah, I'm just going to see if it's on here anywhere.
Just listen to this account, though, for a second. 2 flying discs over Owego, not Oswego, New York. On the 12th day of October, 2013, I witnessed a disc-like object flying from northeast over the village of Owego, New York. Object emitted no sound. There was no trail after it. There was no visible wings of any kind. A short 22-second video taken on a camera phone was shot. The disc moved from southwest to northeast over the western horizon. Now, where's the video? It would be great if he had included, like, a YouTube link. Shortly after, another object, same size and shape, no wings, no trail, no sound, was observed flying from East Binghamton, New York, to the northwest, however higher in the sky than the first object. Having observed thousands of lights going over this area in the last 30 years, I've never seen anything like this before. Sounds, this guy sounds legitimate, or this woman, I don't know. That's just one account. Really cool.
It's a good website, though, right? I'll put the link in the show notes. For anybody who's just listening, they want to look it up right now. It's nuforc.org.
Okay. So
Anyway.
what did you have in store for this evening, Mark?
I'm kind of hopped up on this whole audio thing with the ghost box and the spirit box. And I think that aside from having one particular experience with it, I told you personally what had happened. I'm sorry. I'll tell you what happened real quick, and then I'm going to tell you about what the next thing that I'm kind of getting into, which is less paranormal and just more of a mystery. Mm-hmm. It's still based in audio and radio, though. The thing that happened was I was playing around with the spirit box on my on the Android platform. So I'm just looking at it around 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night. I'm kind of just looking at it and playing around with it. And this is the one that echoes back. It might not be the spirit box. I can't remember which one it is. It's the one that echoes back. Anyway, I'm just messing with it, and it's basically just creating a lot of noise. And I just literally looked at it after about 15 minutes of playing around with it and getting really nothing. And I just said out loud, "This is effing bull S," And as soon as I said that out loud, the door that's the entrance to my office, attic, playroom, whatever you call this place, made a little slamming sound. Now this is not an uncommon sound, as my dog will normally try to get up here, and the door, he'll try to get it open, but instead he's only a 7-pound dog, so he'll get up and put his weight on it. It'll just make a slamming sound. And he'll keep doing it. And my house is old, so if one door is slamming, it's making the whole house shake practically. Yeah. So I jump up right away, go down there, and the dog's not there. So I'm thinking the dog heard me coming and ran. So I go into our bedroom. I'm looking all around for him. I'm like, Yoki, Yoki. I go into our bedroom, and he's laying on our bed asleep, where he's always sleeping on our bed. And I turn on the light. My wife's asleep. The dog is at the foot of the bed, sleeping, curled up. And I click on the light, and he looks at me like, the light is bothering him, like I'm waking him up. Mm-hmm. So I pick him up really quick to just feel like if it's warm underneath, like kind of, if he had just jumped up onto the bed, it would be cold, but it was warm. So he's been there for a while. So it just seemed like kind of a weird little thing. Now, it's totally possible, and this is probably what did happen, is the dog went to come up here, made that sound, heard me coming, and ran back to where he was already on the bed, and kind of played asleep.
Yeah, well, it is odd because you basically just said, "This is effing bull."
Yeah, and it was almost triggered on that. And And when he came back, there was a message on the screen. No, I'm just kidding.
Kind of raises an interesting question, which is, what was the message?
No, I'm kidding around.
It's an interesting question that if you were in some spirits, if they are actually tied into this electromagnetic realm, that if you're intentionally conjuring them up and want them to make themselves heard or known, maybe some of them don't engage. But
if I do an all or nothing thing where it's kind of like, look, I'm giving up.
Yeah,
and
again,
then
it's almost like
triggered.
It's kind of weird. Or maybe some of them are more playful, and they call your bluff in a way. Like maybe there's like a psychology to all this.
With my house, and I have to be honest, almost with disappointment, I'm saying this, that I see. I mean, aside from having a few feelings here and there, I have little to no evidence that there's any type of spirit here, there's any type of presence, aside from a feeling. And it's a minor feeling. So, I think it's just us living here, personally.
Yeah, I think you could tell. I mean, I have, on a later episode, I have a story to tell. And because we're actually trying to get the people on, possibly, who have the experience.
A possible house situation.
Yeah, but the point is sometimes people really, really feel something. And I think we've talked about how we've all been in houses and buildings and places where you really feel like there's something there. It's like the hairs in the back of your, the arms are raising up a little bit.
My friend Eric, he lives in a house not far from where I live, in Lynbrook. You're familiar with Lynbrook, I think.
Yeah.
And, his house was built in, I believe, 1905.
Mm-hmm.
And you go in there, it's a very nice house. Like, it's all the nice, hard, old wood, and it's all very nice. And, it's very different because his house is 20 years older than mine, but it really makes a tremendous difference.
Mm-hmm.
So he hears stuff all the time. I mean, he grew up in his house. He's always lived there. And now he owns the house. And he wants me to come over there with the spirit box, and he wants to kind of conduct a form of, to basically reach out and see what it is, because he thinks that it's his grandparents,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I believe maybe even great grandparents. I'm not really sure. I didn't get into the specifics as to who he thinks it is, and he doesn't think it's a negative spirit, but he knows for a fact there's something there because. He's like, doors closed and all types of weird stuff happen. And he's claimed that there's been a lot of experiences going on, a lot of just strange things. So, for definitely a future episode, I'm going to be doing something like that.
Yeah.
Not just get him on, but I'm going to go there and maybe even do the show from there. He set up I helped him set up a music studio in his house just last week, where I just configured the software for him. Mm-hmm. And, so he's mic'd up. He's ready to go. It's really great.
It's going to be interesting if you bring your ghost box and stuff.
Yeah.
EVP gear.
So we'll see. We're definitely doing that in the very near future. So, Stay tuned on the odd for that.
Okay.
To step away from the paranormal for just a bit, maybe it's not stepping away from the paranormal because this is just a creepy, unsolved mystery, I guess.
Name of the paranoid.
The paranoid, the conspiracies, the conspirators. Basically, I kind of stumbled across these, I guess, what can you call these things? Shortwave radio oddities. Where if you go on the shortwave band of an AM radio, and you tune around, there's specific websites that you can go to and tune into these stations. And every once in a while, you'll come across a voice that's just repeating seemingly random numbers or words sometimes in French, sometimes in German, sometimes in all types of languages, very often English. And they're just saying random things. You also come across little synthesizer type sounds of nursery tunes. Sometimes it's all backwards, it's all in reverse.
Mm-hmm. Cryptic messages.
Right, and these started appearing after World War I, and it's believed that this is a way that countries can communicate with their spies. And it's such a big deal because the shortwave band is not something that the FCC can regulate. I want to look this up real quick because I might even cut this out. Shortwave bouncing.
So I'll just interject while you're looking, but they're called number stations.
Yes.
And it's become, as you just said, there's a lot of importance tied to this and potential. So they actually made a movie about it with John Cusack this past year.
I didn't even know about that until this evening when you brought that up.
Yeah, and it looks kind of like, maybe...
Looks like it could be fun to watch.
Yeah, maybe fun to watch. But just the fact that there's a movie about it. And it's really interesting because in this day and age of everything is done through the internet, it's really interesting that here's this whole other technology that's been around for so long, shortwave radio,
more
and
than
it's still
100
being
years,
used.
probably.
Yeah, and it's still being used, and in a way circumventing the whole internet thing.
So the way that it works is a shortwave radio depends mostly on the ionosphere, which is located 100 miles above our surface. And what happens is the frequency goes there, and it bounces off of the ionosphere and can travel thousands of miles. So if you're in China and you want to broadcast it, I can easily hear it here in New York.
Yeah.
Because it's bouncing so high up and it's such a broad spectrum.
Right.
So what can happen is, say hypothetically, I'm a spy for China. China could say, well, tune into this station when you're, there, and here's your crypt key. You can then find out, we can transfer messages that only we will understand.
And it's interesting because, it's done with this thing called, and you explained it to me, one-time pad, which is a form of cryptography that is virtually impossible to crack, right?
Because it changes for every single message.
Yeah.
And it can be changed on the fly, really. It's really a phenomenal, simple, yet very technical technology, if you even want to call it a technology.
Yeah.
So, what I did is I got into, on YouTube, a lot of people have been, recording these things. There's a very famous one that ran through the 70s and 80s called UVB-76. And that particular one it's more of a pulsating. And for our next episode, I'm going to go really more in depth in this, and I'll have more clips.
Okay.
The UVB-76, it's all over YouTube. If you just do a search, you can hear it. But I'm going to try to dig up the best examples.
Right.
And another thing is, if you wanted to download a collection of this stuff, you can get the 4 CD set for free on archive.org. If you were to search for the Conet project, CONET project.
Okay.
And it's just literally
what
hours.
CDs of these cryptic messages?
Of just these cryptic messages, sure. I'll play you an example if you want to hear. There's another one.
1 5 7 2 8 1 5, 7, 2, 8, 1, 5, 7, 2, 8, 1, 5, 7, 2, 8.
And this will go on for hours, you know? And it's really kind of an interesting thing.
Is that a loop, or is that someone broadcasting that live?
It doesn't sound to me. Sometimes it sounds to me as though it's a machine. And other times it sounds like a person reading it. Like, here's a French person. Or not.
Group 3, 0. Group 3, 0. 2, 4.
And here's a Czech person. Nonetheless, it's a very interesting thing to listen to.
Now, the person who compiled all these, or the group of people, they're pretty sure that these are spy numbers? Spy broadcasts?
I believe this was compiled by 4 particular people who basically were what would you call people who are just really into something? They're just obsessed in a way with these recordings, so they compiled them. Then they got together and released the CDs. They're not sure what they are. I don't think anybody's 100% sure. I believe that the United States has tried to, prosecute people saying that, and they confiscated this type of equipment. And they tried to say that this is a way of, certain countries were communicating with their spies. Certain countries have admitted that this is one way that they have in the past used for communication. And I guarantee, this is still going on right this instant. You can actually go to Justin.tv, I believe, and people are broadcasting them live.
Think of it. The web is so infiltrated by, NSA, Secret Service, FBI, and then in other countries, all of their investigative agencies, right? It's so incredibly saturated by all that it only makes sense that if someone was trying to communicate, without any kind of poking around and stuff like that, this is the only way they can do it.
No, you're absolutely
right. What, are
right.
they going to use a telephone? Talk on their cell phone? Or none of that is secure. Only talking through this radio, where you don't know specifically where the broadcast is coming from. You could receive it from anywhere. And you could use this whole level of cryptography, or whatever they called it.
Yeah, I guess it's a form of cryptography. It's just, I'm not sure what it is, to be honest with you. I mean, it could be straightforward. It could not. It could be a tremendous hoax. This could be just people putting something out there, and it's like one of the longest running jokes.
Yeah. But if you think about it, if spies have their own ways of communicating using these encrypted messages, strings of numbers or words, I mean, they could literally learn a whole language.
Well, there are other theories. There's one particular part of the spectrum where people believe that what they're doing is releasing numbers for future lotteries. Which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Other people feel as though some of the numbers represent stolen credit card numbers. Now, back in 2011, Wikipedia mentions about UVB 76 that it was traced to an abandoned military base in Russia. And supposedly urban explorers tracked down the headquarters and they broke into where it was broadcasting. And they supposedly found an alarm blaring into a microphone and a logbook. Nobody was there though.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm feeling like
there's also backwards music stations. There's a lot of just strange stuff going on out there.
Yeah. Mark, I actually think that based on what you just told me and the just this as being an application for communication, I think it is being used by spies and networks around the world.
I mean, terrorists could use this.
But not even that. But even just government work where they want to communicate and they don't want any trace of something.
Well, that's the thing is you might be able to track down where their signal's coming from, but you'll never be able to track down who it got to.
That's a really good point. You could be anywhere,
right?
And receiving the broadcast.
I mean, you could be one town over, or you could be 4,000 miles away. Now, what if somebody wants to check out something about this? I'm just going to plug one of my favorite YouTube channels. It's called On the Odd. No, I'm kidding. No, it's called Oddity Archive.
Okay.
And, on the Oddity Archive, he has a whole episode just about this, by the way.
Yeah.
But he also, he has like nearly 50 episodes where he has like educational film salute or a collection of industrial musicals. Like GM, for instance, would gather people and they'd sing and do these extravaganzas. Or he would have these weird... He basically digs through the crates of strange media and compiles it for free,
Yeah.
So just like kind of, I guess, what we do. But definitely check them out. Their channel's Oddity Archive, and they're definitely worth, subscribing to.
Well, I think...
But that's about it, for this episode of On the Odd.
Yeah.
But next time, I might just do an episode alone with just my clips.
Mm-hmm.
Because, this stuff, it really kind of... There's something there, and I think it's fun to listen to, and I very well might buy a shortwave radio and maybe record just individual pieces just for the show.
Yeah, it's interesting because to receive the broadcast, you just need a shortwave radio. But how do you broadcast? You need some pretty sophisticated broadcast equipment, right?
No, I'm not 100% sure how the broadcasting thing works. Now, if this is a ham radio type of situation, you need a ham radio license in this country.
Yeah.
You also need a pretty somewhat powerful antenna.
Yes.
And yeah, you need your license from the FCC to broadcast, and you need a pretty decent amount of equipment. Now, a shortwave radio will run you maybe $80 for a cheap one. The one I'm looking at is probably more like $150, $200. And I think it'll be worth it. I think I told you when I was younger, I had a really cheap one, and I used to sample off of it these kind of weird sounds. But I never got into using it for any type of musical application. It was maybe just a little too out there. But anyway, well, thank you very much for talking about it tonight, Alex. I love the stories that you brought up. Hopefully we'll take this all a step further.
Okay.
But all right, so yeah, I'll talk to you next time, Alex.
Take care.